Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, I had a voice of radio. So today, we're going to be looking at Blastoise being really, really good, which I'm going to be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, did not really see it coming. Now, of course, in the upcoming set team-up, we are going to be getting both Blastoise and Charizard. I did videos about these when they were revealed, of course I did. And I said that the Blastoise looked kind of good, but the Charizard looked better. And, of course, these are going to be our theme decks for team-up when they come out over here. So, I'm a little bit excited to find out that the Blastoise is, in fact, actually pretty good. So let's start off with the Blastoise, shall we? All of our translations here come from the lovely David Hochmann over at limitlesstcg.com/translations, and of course, it was a lovely Code64 over on Twitter who hooked us up with the list. Now, Blastoise can attack, but that's not really the point here. The ability says, once during your turn, you may look at the top 6 cards of your deck, choose as many water energy cards as you find there, and attach them to your Pokemon in any way that you like. So essentially, this is just energy acceleration. It's kind of like a really souped up Max Elixir. Now, Max Elixir also let you look at the top 6 cards of your deck. The difference was that Max Elixir could only attach 1 energy, and it had to be to a benched basic Pokemon, whereas this is as much energy as you like. I mean, only water, but you're only going to be playing water. And it can be attached to any Pokemon on the field however you gosh darned well like. And I like this. This is really good energy acceleration. I was worried that we wouldn't find a good enough partner, that it would be too slow, but essentially this is a free Pokemon deck. You got Blastoise and 2 others, and in that regard, Blastoise just sits there and accelerates energy. Now, I should mention the attack here is viable. Free energy, 150, 30 to yourself. It's not one you want to be using very often. It's rarely going to be your plan A. But with a choice band, you can take down a bunch of GXs like Tapu Lele or Rayquaza, and you're hitting weakness on Blacephalon, and you only give up 1 prize, so actually, it's not too bad here. Although I still don't think it's going to be the attack you're using very often. We do want to be getting the energy onto something relevant, and our relevant thing here is Magikarp and Wailord Tag Team GX. 5 energy, 180 damage, oh yeah, and it's got 300 HP. And largely here, this is what you want to be playing around with. This is going to be your attacker a lot of the time. This is your big smashy Pokemon. Because now you're at 180 usually, which means with a choice band, you're up to something like Zoroark. And you got 300 HP. The chances of you getting 1 hit KO'd are somewhat slim. Doable, obviously doable, but I would say somewhat slim here. Though interestingly, this deck doesn't play Max Potion or Race Roller. I'm assuming a lot of that is room. So you're not playing a really tanky build here. So this really is a it comes in and smashes and takes a hit or 2. It is not an it sits there all game not getting KO'd. It's a smasher that can take a hit or 2. And I should mention the GX attack here. You need to have 8 energy on, but when you do, 10 to the active, 100 to all of the bench. That's going to add up fairly quickly. But this is not a fast combo. Blastoise and Magikarp and Wailord, not a fast combo. What we need is something for the early game, and ladies and gentlemen, this is where we say hello to Articuno. Articuno is rather nice indeed, and I really think this is one of those Pokemon that I've slept on. I didn't say it was a bad Pokemon, it's not a bad Pokemon, but I didn't say it was a great Pokemon, and it might legitimately be a great Pokemon. Now, the ability says when it's in the active, your opponent cannot use a supporter card to affect any of your bench water Pokemon. And although this could be a bunch of different ones, really we're talking Guzma here. You're only playing water Pokemon, which means that when your Articuno's in the active, you force your opponent to take on Articuno, which means you can evolve up your bench Squirtle into Blastoise, and you know your opponent is not going to be able to Guzma and KO them. It means you can keep your Magikarp and Wailord on the bench, and you know your opponent is not going to be attacking it early, because they cannot use Guzma to do so. While we're talking about Squirtle, I should mention the Squirtle we're choosing to play here is the one that has free retreat, as long as you have a stadium in play. And it shouldn't surprise you at this point to learn that we are playing Brooklet Hill, because we're only playing water Pokemon. So this is a stadium that can go and get any of your basics. Yeah, that sounds pretty good to me too. Now as for Articuno's attack here, what it does for 2 water energy, so a much lower cost, 70 damage, and you move 2 water energy to one of your benched Pokemon. So essentially here, you attack with Articuno, do 70 damage, move the energy onto your benched Magikarp and Wailord, or maybe Blastoise if you want to attack with them, and then keep rolling. And ideally what you're doing is using Blastoise's ability to accelerate energy onto Articuno, so that you can attack and then move it onto Magikarp and Wailord. And if you're really lucky here, what you can do is hit a few different Pokemon with Articuno, and then Magikarp and Wailord's Tag Team GX attack, doing 100 to all of your opponent's Pokemon, can take many, many prizes in one turn. And in terms of a Pokemon line, that's it. That's what we have here. What we have is Blastoise to accelerate energy, although it can attack, Magikarp and Wailord as your smasher, closer, finisher, whatever you want to call it. And then Articuno for your early game, spread a bit of damage around, wait a couple of turns. And I know Magikarp and Wailord are giving up free prizes here, and that's a little bit of a pain. But it doesn't really matter, because your opponent can't Guzma and attack it early, and your other Pokemon are only giving up 1 prize, so essentially you just hide behind Articuno in the early game, you put your energy from Blastoise onto Articuno to attack, move it onto Magikarp and Wailord, and then clean up with them after doing a bunch of damage in the early game with Articuno. It's an ingenious deck, and one I love very much indeed. You're not playing anything like Tapu Lele here, you can't. Because as soon as you play a non-water Pokemon, your opponent can Guzma it up, and that ruins all of your plan. And your plan is Articuno in the active until you're ready to move it out. I love it! There's no Aqua Patch here, because you don't need any extra energy acceleration. Blastoise has got your back. And there's no Quagsire here, because Articuno and Blastoise essentially let you put the energy wherever you want it. Blastoise when you hit it with the ability, Articuno when you attack. So as long as you plan a turn or 2 ahead, Quagsire just isn't needed. Now, in terms of the trainers, we've already mentioned Brooklet Hill. We see 4 copies of Ultra Ball, because that searches out any of your Pokemon. That's pretty important. We see 4 Rare Candy, because that's needed to evolve up into Blastoise. That's pretty important. We do play a couple of Wartortle as well as the 4 Rare Candy. And what this really says is we want our Blastoise as soon as we possibly can. And we really want 2 or 3 Blastoise. This isn't like a Vikavolt deck where we get one out and we're like, yeah, as long as I don't KO it, we're fine. We want multiples here. We also see 2 copies of Nest Ball because it helps get your basics, as does Brooklet Hill. Between 4 Ultra Ball, 2 Nest Ball and 3 Brooklet Hill, your basics should not be staying in your deck very long. We see 2 copies of Choice Band here, because although Magikarp and Wailord can smash, 180 is not in the upper echelons of damage for Tag Team GXs, and getting some extra damage out with Articuno in the early game can be a huge advantage. We see 1 copy of Rescue Stretcher to get your Pokemon back, and 1 copy of Energy Recycler. Now, this is really, really crucial, because it puts 5 basic energy back into your deck, and if you use this in the mid to late game, your deck's going to be nice and small, and then when you put 5 energy back in, the proportion of energy in your deck is going to be very high, meaning you'll hit more energy with Blastoise. Remember, with Blastoise, just look at the top 6 cards of your deck and attach as many energy as you like, so the more energy you can find there, the better. In terms of supporters, we see 4 copies of Cynthia because it's the best draw card we've got at the moment. We see 4 copies of Lily because it's the second best draw card we got at the moment. We see a couple copies of Tate and Liza. It's a decent draw card, but it also can operate as a switch if you like, and you don't want a Magikarp and Wailord stuck in the active taking a beating. You also need to get your Articuno out the active because it's mostly going to have no energy on because you move it when you attack. So yeah, you need some switching cards. And along those lines, we see 3 copies of Guzma. It's nice to be able to drag Pokemon off the active and hit them, especially with Articuno, so you can set up multiple KOs with Magikarp and Wailord. But also, it's a switching card. And then a couple copies of Erica's Hospitality. You should know by now, Erica's Hospitality is a phenomenal card. You should get used to seeing it in a whole bunch of decks moving forward. It really is going to see a huge amount of play. As long as you don't have too many cards in hand, it lets you draw 1 card for each Pokemon your opponent has in play. That adds up pretty quickly. I love this deck. This is one of the decks I am really psyched to try out. I worry that on turn 1 or 2 it might be a little bit slow because you need to get your energy onto your Articuno, which involves 2 manual attachments or getting a Blastoise out. And I worry that maybe you're not getting up to quite the upper echelon of damage, but then again, if you hit enough with Articuno in the early game, that might not worry. I, for one, am very excited about this deck. But I would like to know if you're excited about this deck. So please do let me know in the comment section. Go nuts, but please remember the most important rule as always. Be nice, would ya? And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at @TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all of that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassyPlays, where we talk about other games and have a lot of fun. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.